Working out the technical kinks.
Yes, go, you're on.
Okay. And I want to answer some questions. And Stephen, hi Stephen, if you're out there. Last week you asked the question, what about diet and regarding chronic asthma and lung infection? Let me sort this down to the asthma part, because a lot of people have chronic lung infections that have asthma. If you can heal the asthma or control the asthma really well, the lung infections start declining. That's not all the case, but let me zero in on the asthma. And you asked about food. There's many possible causes of asthma, but let me zero in on what you're interested in, what your intuition might be telling you about diet. And indeed, there are things that we can be eating that can trigger allergic responses, and they can trigger asthma. And they're a lot different than getting someone who's allergic to strawberries or allergic to bee stings, for example. Those are immediate, those are dramatic, everybody learns, can figure it out. But there's a lot of allergies that are much slower in the onset, much more subtle, and you don't really know, it's not obvious to you. But there's ways of finding out. If anything that you are eating, you might be allergic to and might be having an asthma attack because of what you're eating. And the way this is done, it's called the allergy elimination diet. And you go off of all food for a day or two, drinking water only. Pretty intense, but those who have done this, my goodness, it's such a dramatic thing to them. If they go off all food and they're drinking only water and they stop wheezing, oh my goodness, it's so worth the rigors of that. And many people have done this and they're so grateful just to stop wheezing. And then the next step is, when you've stopped wheezing and it's really cleaned up, because it will in many people, you add back one food at a time. So on the first day that you begin eating a day, you eat only carrots, for example. Carrots all day long. And if by the end of the day you're not wheezing, my goodness, you're building a diet from scratch, a safe diet from scratch. You can eat carrots. And then on day 2, you add a second food. Maybe you add apples. And you eat apples and carrots all day long. And if by the end of the day you're not wheezing, my goodness, you've got this new 2-food diet. And this goes on, and you stay with, in the initial phases of this, simple foods, vegetables, fruits, that you're less likely to be allergic to. And then there can come a time where you can move into the more complex foods, and again, the ritual is the same. You add back one food and you eat it along with your safe foods all day long. And let's say on the 5th day, or the 10th day, you decided to try yogurt, and by the middle of the day you're wheezing. Ooh, you've learned that yogurt provoked your asthma attack. That's eliminated from your food intake forever. And this is how people discover the diets that are really safe for them. For those that this works for, my goodness, it's so beneficial and so dramatic. It's the allergy elimination diet. You can learn a lot more about it. It's not the whole story about asthma, but a lot of folks have improved their asthma just by doing that. Now once you discover that you're allergic to foods, you start working in to see, well, why did that happen? And you can get into such subjects as, are you digesting your foods to completion? Do you have something like leaky gut? Do you have something like a disturbed microbiome in your intestinal tract? Well, I'm going to deal with those subjects at another time. Try the allergy elimination diet, Stephen. If your intuition is correct and diet is related to your asthma attacks and your wheezing, this is the gold standard for finding it out. I love allergy testing, but the gold standard is the allergy elimination diet. And Angie, we know Angie. Hi, Angie. You asked the question, how do you know what supplements to add to your diet? Well, should you be eating supplements at all? Supplementing your diet with nutritional supplements? Well, yeah, absolutely you should be doing that, because we have increased needs for vitamins and minerals and other factors. The food supply is diminished in these nutrients that people are taking through supplements. So I would never dream of running the scientific experiment of not taking supplements with all that I know about this. And I take a handful of supplements every day, absolutely. And which ones do you choose? Well, really the subject of supplementation should begin with your diet, because the very nature's way of giving you vitamins and minerals and cofactors is through the food. And so they're present in the food in the best arrays, the best balance, and the easiest to digest and assimilate. So supplementation really begins with the subject of where's your food coming from. And the very best you can do is have your own garden. Or these days, my goodness, there's farmers markets everywhere. And these farmers are providing us with the very best foods in these farmers markets. And then if there's an organic farmer in your farmers market, this is the very best most of us can do. And even the health-oriented supermarkets and most all supermarkets these days have shifted their attention over to providing organic food. What is organic food? It's how human beings started growing food ever since agriculture began. So we're talking a long time ago, up until about 150 years ago. So there's nothing mystical about organic. It's just natural farming methods. But in that case, the soils are richer and the foods are healthier, and that's for sure. So go organic if you can. And then a lot of us have to digest and assimilate better, especially anyone over 45 or 50 or 60. My goodness, we lose digestive power along with a few other qualities, as anyone who's over 60 probably has figured out by now. So one of the first things that you can consider supplementing if you're eating an excellent diet is digestive enzymes. And for many, betaine hydrochloride, which becomes hydrochloric acid. Those two factors are so crucial in getting the nutrients out of the food and into your body. And so if you go to I Wonder Doctor, for example, we have two varieties of digestive enzymes, both of plant origin and those from animal origin. And they're both a cornerstone of helping yourself getting the nutrients out of the food you're eating. Now, I should back up a bit and say, eat slow, chew your food. This is one of the most powerful things that you can do. We have videos on it on I Wonder Doctor. Want to help your digestion? Eat slowly, chew your food, chew, 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 chew. And then supplement digestive enzymes. And for many of you, and it's a little technical issue to supplement betaine hydrochloride, but we have a video on it on I Wonder Doctor. Now, finally, Angie, I'm going to get to your question, which is what supplements should you add to your diet? Well, everyone should have an excellent multiple vitamin and mineral. That means there's a lot of vitamins in there, and there's a lot of minerals in there, and these formulations are designed to be broad spectrum. And the thing about the world of supplements, though, is at one end of the spectrum there's really low quality, cheap junk. Heavy marketing money goes into it, but not the formulation money, and they're not using the highest quality ingredients, and they're rampant. They're all over the place, and they have been for 50 years. Low-quality nutritional supplements have been available. At the other end of the spectrum, there's the high-quality stuff. And this is sold by professional companies, by professional manufacturers, to health professionals. That could be a holistic medical doctor, or an acupuncturist, a chiropractor, a nutritionist, lots of folks who have their major interest in nutrition and dietary supplements. And this is the best stuff. So that if you have a health provider of that ilk, they're the people to go to because they care about this stuff, and they've cared about it, many of them, for their whole career. And then, so if you have a trusted source, they're the best source. Purchase what they have. It costs more because the good stuff with digestible ingredients, this does cost more. Like, for example, you can go to many stores and find a calcium supplement, but what you don't know, unless you know chemistry of what's on the labels, you could be eating limestone, getting calcium out of limestone. Well, how good is that? Well, it's not so good because it's very hard to digest and assimilate calcium from limestone. Or you could be getting something that was very digestible, like a calcium hydroxyapatite, for example. This is more costly to produce, but you can absorb it into your body and get it into your bones. So I'm just giving you one example of the many, many examples of how people can cut corners, make something inexpensive, but you can't digest and absorb it. Find a trusted source. We have all kinds of recommendations on I Wonder Doctor and in the store. Now, those are the general. Multivitamin and mineral. And also, I think all of us should be taking additional fish oil, omega-3, because of the omega-3 fats in it. There's a lot of reason for that. And we have videos on this on I Wonder Doctor, but this is what I consider to be the cornerstone. And you got to get omega-3 fish oils from a very trusty source, because a lot of these oils are contaminated with toxic metals, so you need a good company once again. And then extra vitamin C. Oh my goodness. This has been so well documented. The human being, unlike many of our mammal friends and relatives, we don't produce vitamin C. Other mammals do, but we don't. We need additional vitamin C. Love to supplement that. B12 is such an issue that I love to take sublingual B12 every day. And yeah, right. And then an antioxidant formulation is the best way to go. Those are my favorite basic multiples. From that point, then that's a little bit of a handful right there. And then to go beyond that, well, there's individual needs. And so the rest of the supplementation program in anybody depends on if you have any needs that are special. For example, those who have diabetes, well, my goodness, you can reduce insulin resistance by taking alpha-lipoic acid and berberine, for example, and even cinnamon and many other factors. If you have high blood pressure, there's some specific supplements for that. So one of the ways we've categorized I Wonder Doctor is broken it down to both the general supplements you can take for any diagnosis you might have, and also the ones that are of special interest for those individual diagnoses. Angie. And here's a question from Teresa. And we just received that a couple days ago. Hiya, Teresa. And she asks, I take metformin. Is it good for you? Well, at times, yes. For example, if you're taking metformin, and I'm going to help everyone else know what that's about, it's a medicine that's it's a pharmaceutical medication that's been around for a long time. And what it's known to do is improve insulin resistance. And that's a very fundamental thing and a very important thing. And I prescribe metformin every so often because when the diabetes, when the glucose regulating mechanism, when the glucose insulin balance is off and you have insulin resistance, that really is important to address. And metformin can do a lot of good things for us if things have traveled along that path a little too far and there's a little too much insulin resistance. And you're a health professional. In this case, you're going to need someone who can prescribe a medication, and this is going to be a medical doctor or a nurse practitioner. And they're going to understand that point at which some of the laboratory tests, they've just gotten a little bit too out of whack, and you want some assistance. And you don't need insulin, for example, but you do need some help there. Metformin is a very popular and useful medication to reduce insulin resistance. And it can certainly buy you time. And if you had to be on it for your whole life, I would choose that over not affecting insulin resistance. But there's also specific nutritional supplementation that can reduce insulin resistance. We have this in the diabetic video series in I Wonder Doctor. And we also go into it under in our store under diabetes. So there's many things that a diabetic could take, as I mentioned in the previous question here. For example, alpha-lipoic acid and berberine. These are nutritional supplements that can reduce insulin resistance. And there's others, and again, they're on our website. So at the core of diabetes, and we have a whole video series on diabetes, it's so crucial to master nutrition and get that one right, and master how you respond to stress. I didn't say getting rid of stress, because these are the main drivers of insulin resistance. So I'm backing you up prior to and underneath metformin, get down to the basics, because, you know, people heal. You can heal. Healing is possible. So yeah, lots of things that you can apply to insulin resistance. And metformin has been a blessing to many, and I've prescribed it frequently enough. And even if you need to take insulin, or insulin for a while, or insulin forever, these are very important medications. So in the world of holistic medicine, I include anything that can be beneficial and anything that can be needed. So metformin, good stuff. And we have a question from JC. Oh, a mild-mannered question. Hello there, JC. Tweak us on Facebook and let us know where you're from. In fact, anyone who's out there. If you have a question for us, you can send that question to us through Facebook or YouTube, and we'd love to know where you're from. And JC asks, are hormones safe? I just read in the national magazine that they give women breast cancer. Oh yeah, 2002, out of the blue it seemed, but derived from a scientific study, there was the statement given out through the press to the world public saying hormones can cause breast cancer. And you know what? It's not correct. Can you believe that? Something that seems like gospel these days. And in fact, the medical community that was part of that study realized soon that, the study was faulted. And there was all kinds of problems in that study. And it was true that the main thing that they studied, which was a combination of horse urine-derived estrogen, otherwise known as Premarin, in combination with this artificial molecule, an artificial hormone called Provera, that combination had a small but statistically significant increase in breast cancer and also arteriosclerosis. And that's what exploded onto the scene. But when the scientists were reviewing the whole study, they saw so many faults in the study. And believe me, there has been scientific study after scientific study ever since that exploded on the American public to try and put that cat back in the bag, because they realized that they never should have made that statement. It never should have come out like that. It turns out, for example, that horse urine-derived estrogens, called Premarin, and that's an interesting thing. Why did they choose horse urine-derived? Because in the early days of manufacture, how do you get hormones? Well, horses are large animals. They're producing a lot of estrogens. Only 50% of them have ever been seen by the human female body. 50% of those horse urine estrogens, they're horse estrogens. But you know what? Millions of women have gratitude for being on Premarin. And Premarin not only did not cause an increase of breast cancer, women who took Premarin had less of an incidence of breast cancer than women who were untreated. So you can see right out of the gate that statement was not accurate. In fact, it zeroed in on the molecule called Provera. That was the problem. It's this artificial thing called the progestin. And then to take it one step farther, and I'm going to make a jump, and I encourage you to read my book because I go into this in detail. It's called Happy Healthy Hormones. It's all about women in menopause and bioidentical hormones. And one of the things that the medical literature demonstrates to us now is that women who are on bioidentical hormones, molecule identical, that means the estrogens in these bioidentical hormones, the progesterone, very different from them progestin, in these bioidentical hormones, even testosterone and DHEA, these are derived from plants and they're molecule identical. It's the same molecules that were produced by the woman's ovary. That women on proper bioidentical hormone treatments have less of an incidence of breast cancer, than women who have never received treatment at all. So, again, you have to begin first with the faults in that study that exploded that unclear information out there. Now, an illness so severe as breast cancer can be, not always, I mean there's a lot of women who've had the diagnosis of breast cancer and have had very successful treatment, and there are many, the breast cancer is many years in their rearview mirror. They did what they needed to do, and medicine calls them cured of this when you're 5 years out, because that's a real safe zone. There's millions of women who've been successful in identifying breast cancer early and treating it. But the breast cancer that we're of concern here is, can it get out of hand? Yeah, if it's neglected, if it's not diagnosed, if people aren't doing the mammograms and the other aren't doing self-examination or wearing compression bras or wearing underwire bras or doing all the things, well, cancer is a very strong illness. There are many of them. There are many very intense illnesses, and they have a million causes. So I'm going to assert to you that no human hormone has ever caused cancer, ever. That's quite a statement. Now, it turns out if you have a well-differentiated breast cancer cell, that means it looks like the parent glandular cell, and you give someone estrogen, it's going to grow a little faster, but that's not causing cancer? Well, we go into this in significant detail in my book, Happy, Healthy Hormones, but my goodness, I love to spend time with women in my office until we cross that line where they get that scientifically it's not only safe to do a proper, and I want to emphasize proper, bioidentical hormone program. It's something that I suggest that most women do for their whole life, because the benefits of taking properly prescribed hormones are enormous for bones, for muscles. What gets women into walkers and wheelchairs, what gets women into Depends, these adult diapers, primarily it's based on loss of hormones. So this is a whole story, it's a big story, and because it matters so much, I delve deeply into that story in my book. All right, JC. And here's a question from Anai. Am I pronouncing that right? Anai, A-N-A-I-S? Well, you have a video on getting my blood pressure down with no stress, but I can't do this. I'm always stressing and stressing. I love this question. And you know, I hope that it was clear in that series of videos that we're not here to say to myself or my family and my beloved people or to anybody that you should be getting rid of your stress. No, not at all. The problem we get into is how we respond to the stress. And you know, tools to respond properly to stress are not widely distributed. So you're not learning how to deal with financial stress, with relational stress, with illness stress. We're not taught this in school or in universities or on TV or in the movies. And yet there's a tremendous body of knowledge that comes down to a very few principles that the stress can occur. And as you develop knowledge and skill, you can do better and better and better with that stress. The stress that's outside and the stress that's inside. In fact, this is a learning process that I so encourage everyone, and I've spent my whole adult life devoted to improving my ability to have appropriate emotional response, called a quiet and equanimous and peaceful response to the agitations in life, to the agitations in myself. And it's a wonderful study. I mean, what could affect your life more? Your ability to be happy, your ability to love, your ability to succeed in communications and relationships and business, in your profession, more than getting wiser and clearer with your own emotions and with your own mind. Oh my goodness, so many different bodies of knowledge and wisdom-based cultures have focused in on how do I improve my ability to deal with the stress that's in my life and to respond properly to it. So again, it's okay that this is challenging for you. We start out that way, all of us do. When we don't have the knowledge and we haven't done the practices, it all seems overwhelming and we don't do well with it and we think it's the stress ourselves. But take on this study, take it on and learn some information and tools. In fact, in I Wonder Doctor, in the whole section called Anxiety and Depression, we keep slipping in information about tools on how you can respond better to your stress. And then, oh my goodness, the wonderful biochemical that helps us mobilize for fight or flight, to fight or flee from the saber-toothed tiger, one of them called adrenaline. Oh, that's the world's greatest blood pressure raiser that exists. Doctors use it in an emergency room when the blood pressure collapses, a version of it. So you learn to respond in a more efficient, more wise, more successful way to the stress in your life. Oh, you're going to love it. Everything gets easier. Everything gets more fun. And everything doesn't spin out of control inside your own mind, inside of your own emotions. or inside of your life. And here's the other thing that happens, that blood pressure comes down. So I wouldn't be concerned about it right now. You're starting out. You haven't acquired those skills. Search for them. Go start with I Wonder Doctor, and there's so many wonderful resources online for no charge. Wonderful resources on how to work with one's emotions and one's mind. So I wish you very well. It's a great journey. It's the great work. Who knew that we should be learning this stuff? No one told me. But my stress and how I was responding to my stress inspired me to see, does anyone know anything out there about how to do better with anxiety and with the stresses of life? And indeed, it's not even hard. It's not even complex. You can learn it. Thanks for the question. It's so fundamental for saving our energy and building our energy and having a healthy body and having a healthy life. So great question. And PD asks, I can't afford organic. I wish I could. Does it work to wash the pesticides off? What crops are the worst ones for pesticides? Well, one thing that I did is I went to the farmer's market, I went to a well-known health food store chain, and I went to a regular supermarket, and I weighed out the vegetables, the fruits. I wrote down the prices. I did the cost comparison, and you'd be surprised. Because if your diet, look what I'm doing. I'm challenging you there. I can't afford. I'm challenging that. I'm saying when you really get good at eating properly, I say you can afford it. And especially when you take all the costs into account that accrue when you're not taking care of yourself. My goodness, the breakdown costs, just like breaking down a car, they get very expensive. But let's just stay with the basic foods. The farmers market are the greatest resource. It's really farm to table. It's farm to you, and there's not intermediary folks there. And when you can find a good farmers market, I assert that you can buy vegetables and fruits and even eggs and some meats at a very reasonable cost, and especially when you eliminate bottles, boxes, and cans. Because pound for pound, ounce for ounce, if they have to take a vegetable and put it through a process that puts it into a can, and all that it takes to get that, you can be sure that pound for pound, that stuff is more expensive. You've got a manufacturing process getting into the middle of your food that you're eating. So a foundational principle is that if you leave out restaurant eating, not forever, but for enough of the time, and you leave out bottles, boxes, and cans, and you find a farmer's market, when you put all your food costs together, not even mentioning throwing in your health costs, you're going to be in a reasonable territory there. And the benefits are so important that I could go on and on and on about the benefits, but that's where I would start. But it requires getting rid of the bottles, boxes, and cans. That means you get rid of the manufacturing process, which is real problematic for the food itself, and it interjects new expenses into food while leaving you with very nutrient-depleted food. So you eat more, your hunger is more, you put on pounds more, you deal with the effects of overweight, on and on and on. So the best I can offer you that I think is so crucial, and we have to do what really matters. And in the world of health, something that you're going to treasure as much as anything that you treasure on earth, the way to go with nutrition is local farmers markets, organic, get rid of the bottles, boxes, and cans and the processed food. It's so important, and it's so doable. And then you did ask, does washing the pesticides off help? Well, you really have to go further than that. You have to peel the stuff. And then are you getting it? Because, I mean, these things they're usually, they behave like solvents. A lot of them are related to the petroleum type of family, and man, those leach into anything. So they some people say, well, skin them. So if you have a carrot that was exposed to pesticides and you peel the skin off, but then the interesting thing there is the skin of so many vegetables is loaded with vitamins and minerals. It's one of the most vitamin and mineral rich parts of a vegetable. So I'm going to ask you to suggest that you do make the transition to organic. And yes, if it's supermarket food that's been grown with pesticides and herbicides, peel it, because that's going to give you a better shot of getting less toxic exposure. What crops are worst ones for pesticides? Well, they're agribusiness crops, because the more a farmer gets into these unusual farming methods that don't work, and so the plants aren't healthy, so they're subject to vermin of all kinds because they're not healthy. Healthy plants, they give bugs and molds a tough time because they're hardy. They're hardier than the attackers. These plants that are nutrient poor, they're weak and they're very vulnerable. So you've got to apply these weird fertilizers to the soil that are selective. They're not the whole thing that nature would provide, and you've got to kill the bugs that they become prey to. So these are strong things. They get into that food. So my recommendation, I know finances really matter, and it's not easy, but oh gosh, I encourage it so much. The green movement and the green, as they've put it, information base is so solid that there's a certain number of things you can grow in your window, there's a certain number of things that you can grow in a garden. There's ways to transition your life to get rid of the bottles, boxes, and cans and grow your own foods in a safe way, and this stuff is so great, more nutritional. So, big topic, great question. And if there are no more questions for today, we'll call it a day for I Wonder Doctor Live. Best wishes to you all. It's good to be with you.